Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Change Podcast. Today, I have another very special guest, and we'll be talking about a very, very important topic. I have Victor Stepp. He is the creator of the Growth Evolution Development blog. Hi, Victor.
Hey, Linda.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Where are you connecting from?
I'm at the moment in Finland visiting my parents, where I grew up, basically, also.
Nice. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about your blog that you have?
Yeah, my blog, it's been around since 2016. As you can probably figure out from the name Growth Evolution Development, it's about self-development. And it's basically a blog that came as a response to me improving my life a bit. As soon as I realized that I can help myself, I immediately started wondering how can I help other people. And making a blog and writing about self-development, how to become happier, how to improve your emotional health, how to start a business, whatever that we can use to improve ourselves, I try to write about. And that's basically what my blog is about in a nutshell.
I love it. I think we need all the help we can get.
Yeah, I think there's space to give some more help always.
Right. So today we will discuss about a very important topic, I feel, especially for our younger generation, but that's not to say that other people who are not young don't have this either, and that is anxiety. Anxiety has become such a growing social problem. So I want to talk about, your own personal experience with anxiety, what tips you have for anxiety, all of that stuff, because I think a lot of people can benefit from a discussion about anxiety. So Victor, how would you define anxiety first and foremost?
Well, to put it simply, I could probably define it as fear that sometimes is very illogical and that seems to be out of control and is partially or totally ruining our lives. If that's how I would summarize it from based on personal experience.
I love what you said about the feeling of losing control, because I feel like that is so relevant, because anxiety, I know I used to have anxiety too. When I had bouts of anxiety, the first thing that came to my mind was I really felt like I was out of control.
Yeah, sometimes we can trace the root cause of this anxiety, but very often it's completely irrational and illogical, and it's just there, and it's way stronger than the normal feeling of worrying a bit. Anxiety is like a whole new level, which makes it very scary already on its own.
Right, and it comes so unexpectedly.
Yeah, usually at the moments when you wouldn't want it at all, like being somewhere in front of people or just sitting on public transport, and crazy.
I feel you. So I understand that you had your own experience with anxiety, and you're someone who has found a way through your own experience and writing about it in your own blog. You've overcame anxiety. So I want to hear your story about anxiety. What did you feel, or what have you experienced with anxiety?
Yeah, actually you mentioned a good point, because I want to just go ahead of myself a bit and say that writing about it is something that really always helps. And ever since I started my blog, it's improved tremendously. So that's just something I wanted to get across in case I forget to talk about it later. But if you ask me about my experience with anxiety, basically, I was born in Moscow, Russia, but I was raised in Finland. We moved pretty quickly to Finland. And of course, there was the language barrier. I didn't know Finnish at all at the moment. Of course, kids are sometimes angry, they bully each other, and I would be the foreigner. And probably those of you that also grew up in a different country understand very well what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of bullying going on, and just me not understanding people because the cultures are very different, and people understanding me. And what happened was that I just started to close up. One thing to add is that I have a brother who's 7 years older than me, and that's a big age difference in terms of we used to fight and a lot, like physically, and I would never win, obviously. And it's kind of like a joke. I tend to laugh about it, but then it was a trauma that was happening that I wasn't aware of,
Mm.
because I was beaten up at home, for example. Like for my brother, it was a game. For me, it was a game, but not really. And then you go, and then you go outside, and then you have problems communicating with people, and you just feel always like you're weaker than everybody else, and you begin to close up into yourself. And I remember, because I didn't think of anything related to self-development. I didn't analyze my actions, my thoughts. I never responded to my emotions. I always reacted. Uh, think something scary happens, I'm in fear. I don't question the fear. I'm nervous about something. I don't question it. Something unpleasant is happening in front of me. I will rather walk away than try to confront it to understand why am I feeling this way. So basically, I just felt like kind of victim to my own emotions and closed up. And it got worse and worse and worse. And then I always found excuses why I closed up. Like, for example, if I don't want to present, I didn't want to present because I fear of presentations is beyond everything for me.
Many people.
Yeah, but I'll tell you soon how extreme mine was. And then I would find an excuse, and I would say, well, presentations are not my thing. I don't want to present. Or like if I'm, if I'm too afraid to say no to somebody, I would say, well, they don't deserve a no. I rather say always yes. And so it's kind of, you always try to be the good guy, but then you end up being the bad guy for yourself. And I remember I was around the age of, I hope I don't get these numbers wrong, around the age of 20, I was living in Amsterdam, and I was studying in a university college. It was really stressful, a lot of work, and I was already by then like super introverted and anxious and whatever. And I remember, for example, you mentioned presentations. Like I would be so afraid of commenting on anything. As soon as the teacher would call on me, I would get super red and just tremble. And if I would say something, I would later sit for like an hour thinking, oh God, I'm so stupid. People are so much smarter around here. And so what happened, I didn't even want to raise my hand anymore. And we had to present because it's part of every course. There's a long presentation. And my fear of presentations is the correct word, extreme. I remember I was so nervous, so anxious about it that I would get super red in my face. And in order to hide this redness somehow, I would put a red t-shirt so that my face wouldn't seem so red. I remember listening to hypnotic tapes and stuff like that to help it, but of course none of it helped for me, at least. I remember reading that vitamin C helps with anxiety. I sat there in front of a presentation all in a red t-shirt drinking 1.5 liter of orange juice.
That's a lot of orange juice.
Yeah, the only thing it did made me want to go to the toilet, but that was about it. So I would fear all of this stuff, and I had no idea you could do something about it. My natural reaction, as probably for many people out there, is to run away as fast as you can from all of this stuff. And then a few other negative events happened to me at that time, and plus the stress, plus everything, and it all piled up and finally just blew. I remember sitting in class, and for no reason during a lecture, my heart started to pound like really, really hard. And I remember I got like tunnel vision. Things went dark in my eyes. I thought I was dying. I had no idea at the moment what was going on, but I felt it in my heart. So what I did is I took my bag and I ran away, and I really thought I was dying, like really scared, not even anxiety itself anymore, but like actual fear of death. I remember first thing I tried to run to this grocery store and buy like vegetables and fruits, like vitamins, and just go home and lie down. I went inside the store, and then it started again, just tunnel vision, heart pounding.
Wow.
And then I ran out of the store, and I remember I just was walking somewhere. I didn't care where. I had like tears in my eyes thinking like, am I really dying? Like this this is so bad. I don't know who to talk to, how to talk to, like, I don't know what to say. I came home, I was lying, and then it kind of started again, but not that strongly. And then it finally hit me that it's not starting from my heart. My heart is reacting to my mind. It's actually anxiety, like on a whole new level. And my heart is just a natural reaction of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so things got bad, and I realized that I'm not okay. I basically quit university college, went back to Finland, and had like a year off, just doing my own stuff. Then got into another IT school, it got a little better. I fixed my diet, started doing sports, which is super important, and we can get into that list soon. Very important for anxiety, and basically it started to go towards the better side again. The blog was the result of my improvement. That was in a nutshell of my story with anxiety, because so that you know, the anxiety was real. It was there and it was bad.
Many people, I feel, are even more frustrated and even more lost and even more hopeless because they're not sure where their anxiety comes from. And like you said, they don't know who to talk to. And even if there is somebody, they don't know what to say. Because unfortunately, mental illnesses and mental disorders like anxiety are still a bit taboo to talk about in our society. You know, no one's going to come out confidently and say, I have anxiety, and be embraced by everybody, right? So where do you think, maybe you can speak from your own experience, where do you think anxiety comes from for people who are not sure of the root of anxiety?
Well, in my opinion, there are two probably causes that I can point out. The first is the more obvious cause, as a person has some kind of a traumatic experience. Like, I don't know, people who were in the military, or I don't know, something happened to you as a child, or I don't know, you got hit by a car, and then certain triggers always call up this anxiety. Well, in this case, you really know what the source is. And even though it's also really bad, the experience, you can at least kind of, you can think about it in a different way. You know what to talk about to your whatever friends or a psychiatrist. And then the second type of anxiety is the one that confuses people because it comes out of nowhere. It's like with me, just events. Instead of me improving my life, instead of me working on my flaws or my faults, I basically ran away from it. And this constant repetition of the same type of behavior, where you just run away from your problems, leads it to basically a dead end where it just goes over the board. And you mentioned, like, some people don't know where anxiety comes from, and fear is a real thing. I sometimes sit there, I have no idea, like, there's an event that's coming soon, I don't even know what I'm more afraid of, but the event or me being afraid of the event. And that's it's horrible because it sounds crazy. It's true, but it's real.
I think because, like, if I may, I'm going to share my story of anxiety too, because I had a real bad, like, social anxiety as well. And when I look back, I think about this too, because I do life coaching. I'm a yoga meditation teacher, and I have a lot of people who have anxiety. And the number one thing that they ask me is, it's so frustrating because I don't know where this anxiety comes from. If they knew the root, at least they can fix the problem. But if you don't know the root, you don't know where to start. So when I look back on my own experience with anxiety, I had a lot of social anxiety due to social media. Because on social media, we have so many images of beautiful people with perfect lives. And I didn't think how much that would affect me mentally. But it's so easy to get lost in the Instagram space, just randomly scrolling mindlessly. But you don't think that those images are doing much to you, but actually they're leaving a very big impact inside of your mind that makes you compare your life with other people. And the images that I saw on social media, obviously they're not realistic. I know people who go to a party just to take one picture for the Instagram, right? And I know girls who put on full makeup just for one picture for Instagram, and then they hashtag, like, woke up like this, So it's like,
Full makeup.
right, full makeup, woke up like this. Like, it's like unrealistic images that made me feel if I don't look like her, if my life isn't like this person, then my life is worth nothing. My face is worth nothing kind of thing. So I think because of that constant comparison I was doing consciously or subconsciously, for me, all of that led me to making me feel like I was never good enough, that I could never be pretty enough. I could never have a good enough life because I wasn't hanging out in mansions with gold toilets and like all that stuff, you know? So from that, I started this negative self-talk that social media has taught me, that you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you'll never be good enough, you'll never be good enough. Just stop trying. You should just die. You should just kill yourself. You should just quit because you'll never be good enough. You'll never be good enough. And that was constantly going on in my head. So when I did come to opportunities like giving a presentation or speaking in front of people, I just saw a million faces that I felt, like you said, irrational thought. I thought all these people's eyes were looking at me, telling me, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, which made me freeze, right? I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to mess up. And if I mess up, they're going to be like, see, I told you, you're not good enough, you know? And I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people can probably relate to that, especially the younger generation, because they're so mindlessly on their phone, scrolling through Instagram, constantly comparing themselves.
Yeah, I actually say often to people like social networks are bad for your health. Like, and your example is exactly that. Like, you should limit your intake of these kind of things. And just, and also you mentioned about presentations and thinking you're not good enough. That's exactly what I felt. And I used it as an excuse to not do anything about it. Like, I'm not good enough. Someday later, I'll become better. And also one thing I noticed is it really helps is you stop focusing on yourself and you start focusing on helping other people, then it becomes really a lot easier. When you're presenting, but also when you're looking like for a purpose, if you think what you can do for the people around you, you get so many new ideas and it's just so much easier to live this way.
Right. And an image that was actually given to me when I was going through all that is every flower that blossoms is beautiful.
Great.
Now, there some flowers are rose, some flowers are lilies, some flowers are peonies. They're all different flowers, but every flower is beautiful in its own way when it blossoms.
Yeah.
So I think for me, like my anxiety, the biggest thing that it did was it made me not express myself. Because I always felt like no matter what I said, it was going to be judged. And I was so afraid of people's judgment. I didn't want people to think I was less than them because I felt like I was less than them. I didn't need them to tell me verbally, hey, you are less than me, you know? So I was so afraid of that judgment. And because I was afraid of that judgment, I wouldn't speak my true mind.
Fear of judgment is a crazy beast.
Crazy, crazy. And I think a lot of our anxiety comes from there.
Yeah.
And maybe when you turned red for their presentations, it was because there was something inside of you that felt like, oh my God, I'm going to be judged for this.
Yeah, it's the funny thing is that I didn't have it when I was younger. So it's not something that I can think of that's like genetically, somehow present in me always. I used to be better before, but the more I closed myself in, the more nervous I got and the more red I became, which is funny.
Right. So when we're trapped by that fear of judgment, like, yeah, when I look back, I had debilitating fear of judgment. And the advice that I want to give to people out there who might be going through similar things or the same thing is that honestly, people are not judging you as much as you think. Like we think that they're judging us so hard when they look at us with their eyes in our presentation, but actually they're probably thinking about nothing.
Yeah. I always say that people have their own life to worry about. Nobody cares about you that much. It's okay, relax. People have their own problems, they have their own fears. Even if you're doing something super different from everybody else and your friend looks at you and you're like, well, that's new. well, it's okay. They can think about it for a minute. Then life goes on for them as well. They go into their own things. You don't have to sit there in the corner thinking that 24 hours a day, people around you are always thinking about you, about how you're doing things, about how you look, about how you think and how you act.
Right. And one more thing about the anxiety that I remember when I felt was a lot of that anxiety, of course, I said came from fear of judgment. But now when I look back, a lot of that anxiety came from my mind being so disconnected from my body. You know, my body was here, but my mind was like in the future, you know, worried about things in the past, regretting about things. So my mind was wandering everywhere. So I was losing control of my own mind. So I really benefited from mind body practice that made me bring the mind back to my body, because when it connected with my body, that's when I felt total peace. But I realized that anxiety came from my mind wandering off in all different directions, out of control.
Yeah, it's good that you actually mentioned this because the mind-body connection is just extremely important, and it's so easy to forget about it in this life. Because if you think about anxiety, it is basically your mind all over the place and nowhere at the same time. And you need to ground yourself. Either you do it emotionally by somebody telling you things that are true and not just in your mind, but also taking care of your body really affects your mind. I also, for many years, did yoga. That has helped tremendously. I meditated. I also stopped drinking coffee. At that point, I realized that it's a direct cause of my anxiety. I drink 2 cups of coffee, and I realized that I'm anxious, but there is no cause. There's no cause. I'm just nervous for no reason, and it became very apparent, and I stopped drinking coffee, and it improved because, well, I mean, caffeine raises adrenaline and stuff like that. And doing sports is also very important, releasing toxins, just becoming more healthy, eating better food, because there's just so much weird stuff in the grocery stores right now that affects our mind and the body. And it may seem like much work or very simple information, but just do it. Try to exercise daily. Try to eat healthy. You'll notice how the better your body feels, the better your mind will feel.
Mhm.
And that's important to keep in mind.
Are you still dealing with anxiety? And if you are, is it less than before? How did you learn to manage your own anxiety?
Yes, to be honest, I don't lie to anybody. I'm still dealing with anxiety, but the point is that it's on a whole different level. It's nothing to what it used to be because I know how to work with it now. The most important thing to keep in mind is to never run from it, never sit, on pharmaceuticals, never drink alcohol or take drugs to run away from this. It only takes away from the symptoms and then it gets worse again. I basically, like I said, I stopped drinking coffee. I started eating healthy. But the most important thing that's always helped me is that I remind myself that, first of all, if you have anxiety at some point in your life, it doesn't mean that you're sick forever. It's not like a stamp on you. Keep reminding yourself that it's not eternal. It gets better the more you work with it. And that alone will help a lot of people already. Just the idea that it's not going to be there forever. It's going to improve. It's important to find people to talk to about this. That's why I say that when you're a small kid, it's important that your parents talk to you about things. And when you get a little older, it's important that you learn how to respond to situations. And I unfortunately didn't have anybody to teach me to respond to these situations. I had to learn it once the anxiety was already there. And so now it happens. I have different things that I think about. I always remind myself, okay, it's just going to go away quickly. Don't worry about it. And it does. It just goes away. And I always remind myself, like, you've been through this for the last 10, 12 years. What's the worst that has happened? Well, me not feeling well. And when I remind myself about it, it just, there's nowhere to go. You've hit already that point. From there on, it's just going to soften. So it's very important to remind yourself that you're not going to have to deal with it. Some people don't want to start working with it because they think well, there's so much work ahead. I need to do this and this and this and this, and they think that it's either black or white, point A, point Z. Well, the thing is that as soon as you start working on it, even before you become perfect at it, you're going to see improvements, and your life is already going to become so much better. Don't have the mindset, the all or nothing mindset. It hurts. Just start improving. If you can, if you're not doing sports, start doing sports. Start reading motivational books. Start really good book that I read, helped me a lot, was called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. It's helped me tremendously. Read people's stories of how people were able to overcome. It helps. Then you realize that you're not alone with this problem.
I love what you said about don't run away, because I feel a lot of our young people, when they feel anxious, when they feel bouts of anxiety, they turn to self-harm, or they turn to thoughts of suicide, of giving up, thinking that, if I'm going to live like this forever, I don't want to live this way. So there's a lot of kids who resort to the ultimate no, which is self-harm and suicide. So please, 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 the young people who are out there listening to this podcast, as Victor said, it gets better. Just talk to someone about it, learn some mind-body techniques. Self-harm, suicide is not the answer, because that will actually make you more anxious. So please, if you have thoughts of self-harm, if you have thoughts of suicide, that is not the answer. And I know this for 100% fact.
Me too.
Yes, fact. And Victor is a living proof that you can learn to deal with it. You can overcome it. This is not something that's forever. It's not something that you're branded with, like he said. It's not an eternal scarlet letter that you have to wear on your sleeve. It does get better. Just learn some mind-body practices, breathe, eat better, take care of yourself well, really, really take care of yourself to help you overcome the anxiety. It's kind of like a little baby, like when a baby is crying, you don't slap the baby to be quiet. You don't kill the baby to be quiet. You have to console the baby.
Self-harm is that slapping part.
Right.
You have to take care of it. Right. And some people, they simply don't know any methods, like you said, the mind-body techniques. You need just Google, use the internet for your benefit. There are certain things that you can start applying right this moment to help yourself emotionally overcome these moments of anxiety. Some people, they, like me, until I started Googling, I had no idea. Until I started having the problems, I had no idea. Don't wait till it gets too bad.
Right. Yeah. And I also have a video about dealing with anxiety with breathing. So I'll link that video down below in the description. So finally, Victor, do you have some advice for people who are dealing with anxiety right now? What can they do to feel better?
Well, like I mentioned already, first of all, realize that it's not eternal. That should be your mantra, because some people think that, like, I know how bad sometimes you can feel because of anxiety, and your first thought is that, oh my God, I'm gonna have to live this way forever. No, you don't. You don't have to. The sooner you start working with it, the sooner you will get better. Plus, time heals, and that's a very important point. Like I also said, don't run away from it, because as I grew older, I ran away from it more and more and more, and it got worse. It doesn't stand still. It actually starts chasing you and getting worse. And so it's very important to not run away. And also one thing that helps is that when I had the fear of public speaking and I just standing there in a red t-shirt drinking orange juice, I felt like I've hit the rock bottom, like trembling and all shaking. And, I realized that I need to do something. Of course, I realized I actually started doing something like 5 years later only, but the point is that I did start doing something, and I joined Toastmasters, which is like public speaking classes. Yes. And it improved. Now I'm still nervous. I still get red. I still feel anxious, but it's like a whole different level. It's like 5% of what it used to be. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that challenge your comfort zone. Make it a game. I remember there would be a crowd and I would feel anxious to go through the crowd. What if I have to like say to somebody that, please, can you get out of the way? it became like a challenge game where I would actually go through the crowd and be like, I can do this. And then I would go through and I'm like, checked, I feel better. Like this part won't feel that scary next time. So it may sound like not much, but challenge your comfort zone. Start leaving it a bit, bit by bit, step by step. And when you overcome some little problem, next time that problem won't be as bad anymore. And so don't stand still there. Also find people to talk to about it. It's very important. It's good to, of course, talk to a psychiatrist, but it's even more important to talk to friends maybe who can help you out. Because being alone with it and just closing in yourself and being too afraid to talk to people about it it's a really, that's not the best road, I would say. So find somebody to talk to.
I love that, because oftentimes when I have a problem and just simply talking to one of my friends about it, I realize my own answers just by
Yeah,
talking.
sometimes you just need a listener. They don't even have to say anything.
Right. It's not necessarily talking to receive advice. It's just me talking through my thoughts. And then oftentimes I get my own answers in my head.
The aha moment.
I love it. Thank you so much, Victor. How can people go to your blog and find out more about what you do?
Well, my blog's URL address is gedground.com. Just one word, no dots, no slashes. And basically that's how you find me. There's the links to my social networks. You'll see in the header to my YouTube channel. And thank you, Linda, for this opportunity. I appreciate it very much. I think this will be useful for your listeners and just people who will find your channel later, because like you said in the beginning, anxiety is a really big topic, especially in this world that's developing way faster than we can catch up with it. It's crazy.
I agree. And I'll link Victor's blog down below for people who want more resources and to connect with what he does. So thank you again, Victor. It was
Thank you,
such a
Linda.
great pleasure speaking with you. Anxiety, it's a real problem. Speak to somebody. You are not alone. Thank you, everyone. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.